Welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 43. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping note. I'm thinking about moving the time up to 8 o'clock starting next month. The reason has been 8:30 is because Wednesday used to be my trash night. I had to get the trash out before I could do the program. Trash night has since moved. So I'm thinking about starting at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30 next month. If anybody has any objection to that, feel free to message me, and I'll reconsider if I have to. Beyond that, let's get started. Tonight's program is two separate things. We're going to start off with some lighthouses out in the Delaware Bay, and then move on to the Great Western Tour of 1978. So let me get the program started. Back over here, share screen, desktop 2. Okay, you all should be seeing the title slide.
Correct.
Trouble Creek and Vicar, there it is.
There we go. Okay. And we shall get started. Back on August 10th, I went down to Cape May to take a lighthouse tour with Pete Laro and Laro Photography. We sailed out of Cape May in mid-afternoon. My first stop was over at the old Strathmere Hotel in Cape May, near the lighthouse. This was the place that was a religious retreat for many, many, many years. When the religious organization closed it down, they wanted to tear the building down and return it back to nature, because it sits right out on the bay. They have since sold it to a group that's going to use it for a marine research center. I wanted to see if anything had been done to the building yet, and the answer is no, nothing's been done to the building yet. It's sitting there vacant, but it is going to be saved. Great old hotel. Then I went over to Higbee Beach and caught the Cape May Lewis ferry departing, leaving Cape May, heading for Lewes, Delaware. Here it is backing out of the ferry slip, and off it goes. That's the ferry terminal in the background. On our boat, off we went, and this was the first time I'd ever sailed the Cape May Canal, the part of the Intracoastal Waterway. And here we are going through the old Cape May Line railroad bridge, which I had ridden across a few times when Cape May Seashore Lines operated here. The bridge has been out of service for quite a while. I don't know why it's still there at this point. The state doesn't want to fix it. Our boat barely fit through here, but anyhow, off we went through the Cape May Canal. As usual, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to jump in. Just hit your space bar, ask your question, make your comment. No worries there. We had to stop before we exited the canal because we were just in time for another ferry to depart. It's backing out of the slip here, blocking our path. You can see the osprey there in their nest. And there goes one of the parents off to find more food. Those are actually young ones there in the nest. This is the other ferry. The one that was pulling out was the New Jersey. Here's the Delaware. They have 3 boats. I think the third one is the Cape Henlopen. And so here we go. We're off chasing the ferry out into open water. Even the canal. I've been out in the bay a few times before shooting these lighthouses, and I've gotten plenty of sunny day shots of them. This was supposed to be a mixed day with scattered thunderstorms coming in at some point. But a lot of clouds, which, I had the sunny shots, but the clouds made things a little challenging. Seagulls followed us out. They must have thought we were a fishing boat and they were going to get some free food. They followed us out quite a ways. Our first stop was Brandywine Shoal. Still had clear skies here. This is a Pete Laro photo. That's our boat. We had this huge, huge boat for 24 of us. Plenty of room. You can see the shoal there at Brandywine Shoal Lighthouse in the background. Small boats can sail into that shoal, and they're rebuilding the dock so you can access the lighthouse again. And there's the entrance into the shoal, and that's the dock there with the orange pilings there. It'll eventually be connected to the lighthouse. So we're leaving Brandywine Shoal. Now we're approaching 14-foot Bank, my favorite lighthouse out in the bay. Looks like an old haunted house attached to a lighthouse in the middle of the water. Plenty of birds. All the lighthouses in the Delaware Bay have white roofs. They may not have started out that way, but that's what they are now. So here we are leaving 14-foot Bank. Next stop is Maya Mall. You can see the clouds are beginning to come in now. This is kind of cool because I had never been out here on a day where you could work the sun and the clouds like this. Unfortunately, our boat, being the size it was, isn't as flexible as the smaller boat I've been on before that came out of Fortescue, the Bonanza. The Bonanza could actually circle these lighthouses, but in some cases, the shoal these lighthouses are protecting extend quite a ways away from the lighthouse, and our larger boat could not do complete circles around some of these lighthouses. A lot of playing with the cloud formations.
Maxfield Parish Day.
What was that, Sandy?
I said it's Maxfield Parish clouds, if you will.
Yes.
The artist.
Next stop was Cross of Elbow Ledge. Used to be a spark plug lighthouse. The spark plug is gone. Now just has a skeleton frame with a light mounted on it. And the birds are out here too. From there, we went up to Ship John Shoal. Farthest north we got, which is its last lighthouse out in the water, going north towards the Delaware River. We're supposed to get here at around sunset. We got here way early because the tide was just ripping. It was in our favor. And we just went right along, got here way ahead of sunset. So we spent the time just kind of bobbing around and circling. The sunset was kind of blah, but these are actually lighthouse workshops. And Pete Laro told us how to set our white balance and then add a touch of purple to the scene to do a pseudo sunset. And using his settings, this is what we got. Also had a moonrise over Ship John Shoal. Now, we were supposed to be out until midnight. We're going to go back to all these lighthouses and light them up at night. Here we see the lights being turned on to light up Ship John Shoal. The problem was those scattered thunderstorms turned into one massive system. And we got our shots at Ship John Shoal, and then the skies just opened up. Wicked thunderstorms came across. Thankfully, we had the bigger boat. We made a run back to Maya Mall, where the rain left a little bit. By then, though, the bay had gotten pretty angry. And sometimes being on a boat sitting still in choppy water is worse than being on a moving boat in choppy water. Our captain decided that it was time to head in. So all we really got was the one night shot of Ship John Shoal before we had to call it a night. So that was the most recent of my lighthouse extravaganzas. We're going to change gears here now. Back in 1978, my family, my dad and mom, my brother and sister and I, along with my brother-in-law at the time, we decided to do it like a 24-day cross-country trip. And we had all the, some of the big national parks, Grand Canyon, Zion, Bryce, a whole bunch of stuff out west there, all the standard stuff, Mesa Verde, things like that. There were some train activities included in the itinerary. The Silverton branch was the biggest of them. Did a fantastic Jeep ride out of Uray. It was phenomenal. Anyhow, my brother-in-law couldn't be with us the first couple of days. So 5 of us, my brother and sister, mom and dad, and I, we piled into our Ford Granada, left early in the evening to drive straight through across the east. Mom had planned the trip out, and she had us making our first stop at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. We got in at 2 o'clock, and lo and behold, the town Mom had randomly picked out and booked our hotel was Effingham, Illinois. I had no idea Effingham even existed. Saw an Amtrak sign. We had time, so me, Dad, and Bruce headed down to the station while Mom and my sister stayed back at the motel. But lo and behold, Effingham is a major crossing of the Illinois Central and at the time Conrail, former Pennsylvania Railroad. And we spent some time here, and just fantastic. My only really good look at Illinois Central in the orange and white paint scheme. Had a nice parade of trains going through here the whole time we were here. Now, all these shots were shot on with a Miranda Auto Sensor X EE camera with a kit 50mm lens, not the sharpest lens in the business. And they're all shot on Fujifilm prior to Fuji Provia. And all of these have shifted reds. What you're seeing are some color corrected images. Here goes the National Limited, back when that still ran, on the Conrail line, ex-Pennsylvania Railroad, hitting the diamonds at Effingham. I guess this is Illinois Central Gulf era, because this one has the Gulf on it. So this was post-Illinois Central. They were still doing train orders at Effingham, amazingly enough. Here's a conductor on a caboose picking up orders. Here's the departure board in the station. A lot of the IC trains are gone. The Illini, City of New Orleans, City of Miami off the board. Shawnee and the Panama Limited were running. And then down below it there, that westbound and eastbound, that would be the National Limited. Strangely enough, they were trains 30 and 31 back then, it looks like, even though today those numbers are assigned to the Capital Limited. Here comes a Conrail freight, engineer ready to pick up orders. Of course, back then I was too stupid to know to get the shot of them grabbing the orders. Back in 1978, I knew nothing about photography. Very little about trains other than what came in the monthly magazines. There's the National Limited going the other direction. And it had a private car on the back. This is back in the days when Amtrak required all private cars to be painted in Amtrak colors. And some GM&O mixed in. This is just after the Illinois Central Gulf merger. And a GM&O caboose. From there, we went to St. Louis, to the National Museum of Transport, which had a different name back then. Of course, I, being somewhat obsessive, I just shoot everything at the museum at least once. You're not going to see shots of everything at the museum. Here's a couple of the highlights, though. The Lackawanna Camelback was there. This is Southern 6100, actually the EMC Demonstrator 103. It was later restored to its demonstrator colors and toured around the country quite a bit in the late 80s and early 90s. My mom and sister were not impressed with this museum. Here's a Pennsy P5 box cab. And Big Boy 4006.
I hate to say the 4700 doesn't look much different today.
Norfolk and Western Y6. Some discussion on the Capitals train number in the chat. Capitals 29 and 30, so 30 and 31 was National Limited back then. That kind of strange. Anyhow, moving along. Oh, Missouri Pacific ran right outside of the fence at the museum. And of course, I was so excited to see Missouri Pacific for the first time ever that I just shot through the fence. Then Mom wanted to see Griggsville, Illinois, where the Purple Martin capital of the world. So off we went to Griggsville. The sign there, if you can't see it, that shows that each Purple Martin eats 2,000 mosquitoes a day. You can see the Purple Martin houses all lined up there. Well, much to Mom's chagrin, more trains. The Purple Martin Express was actually located in Griggsville. And here we see a Norfolk and Western freight out on the grade crossing going past the Purple Martin Express. I believe at one time this had a Burlington Hudson on display along with it, but when we were here, it was just the coaches. So Mom's trying to avoid the train stuff, and we stumble into Griggsville and this stuff here. From there, we went over to Topeka, Kansas for the night. We got in early enough that me and Dad and Bruce could sneak out and poke around Topeka. We found the old Rock Island Roundhouse in Topeka. Once again, I had never seen the Rock Island before. This is kind of cool.
I find it amazed that a roundhouse that small could survive and even in 1978.
Yeah.
Even on Rock Island.
Yeah, Topeka Tower still stood. Then from there, it was over to the Santa Fe in Topeka, where we found this this car here. I'd never seen CF7s before. The modified, heavily modified former F units that Santa Fe had rebuilt. We did encounter a cop here, and he sort of tossed us out off the property. The first time in my entire life I was tossed off of out of a railroad facility. That was pretty bizarre. And for some reason, this Bessemer SD was out there too, quite a far ways from the from its steel hauling in Pittsburgh. Our hotel overlooked the state capitol and the Santa Fe headquarters building. This is a shot using my very rudimentary at the time night photo skills. to get a shot of the Santa Fe neon sign atop the headquarters building. The next day we did our family stuff, and then my brother-in-law finally caught up with us at our stop this night, which happened to be in Goodland, Kansas. Well, lo and behold, Goodland is a big Rock Island town. Mom's doing really well picking out these stops. With my brother-in-law's arrival and his car, this really helped because now the five of us crammed into the Granada could spread out. Me, Dad, and Bruce had the Granada and could go rail fanning, while the other three did more touristy things. So here we are in Goodland, Kansas on the Rock Island. This trip would be the only time I ever shot the actual Rock Island. I never got back to see this railroad again before it was abandoned. Now we're in Cheyenne. We got to Cheyenne and we had heard rumors, because back then information was impossible to come by. We had heard rumors that there was a big boy and a Challenger still in the Cheyenne roundhouse. Well, we found the big boy out in the park, so it wasn't in the roundhouse. And we found the Challenger out in the parking lot in front of the station, so it wasn't in the roundhouse. But we went up into the station anyhow and talked to one of the employees there. And we're like, yeah, we had heard that, the big boy and Challenger were still in the roundhouse. He said, no, he said they got moved a few years ago. We're like, okay. So we turned around, dejected, ready to leave. He goes, oh, he said, but the 8444 is out in the roundhouse. Do you want to see that? We're like, well, yeah, sure. Of course, 8444, which is actually now Union Pacific 844, was their big excursion engine at the time. So here's the 8444 in the Cheyenne roundhouse. Cheyenne shop, actually. It's not in the roundhouse itself. Also, there was Union Pacific 838, a sister to the 844. The 838 being used as a parts locomotive to keep the 844 running. The 1243, a little 460 was out, it was in there. And the 5511, 210-2, massive 210-2, also stored there. The 5511 and the Challenger are both heading for Silvis, Illinois, to the new facility there. I'm not sure what's going to happen to that 460. It wasn't mentioned as part of the deal of what Union Pacific was donating to the folks in Silvis. We found this in a park in Cheyenne. And then this trackside. I had never seen Union Pacific Centennials before, the biggest diesel locomotives ever built. Excuse me. And this would be my only time ever seeing Centennials actually in service. Union Pacific GP30, I think we actually climbed up onto the Colorado and Southern Bridge and shot these. Another Centennial. And like I said, back then, I didn't know what I was looking at really. I would have made more of an effort to not get the guy's pickup truck in the back in the picture here. And of course, I didn't know at the time that I would never get back out here again while the Centennials were actually running. My one attempt at a pan shot, we were heading south on the interstate and caught up to this Colorado and Southern freight, Colorado and Southern being a subsidiary of Burlington Northern. And I tried this pan shot out the car window as he rolled along. Now we're at Georgetown Loop, the Georgetown, Breckenridge, and Leadville. This is before the loop was completed. The bridge was not built yet, reconstructed. This is some of the stuff that was hanging around there. yeah, these two Baldwin outside frame consolidations. While it looks like the one on the left has its headlight on, it is not on because you can see it's got a rod dangling onto the ground there. The one on the right was what they were using, the 44. And I got a few pictures of the tourist train from the road. From there, it was over to Central City, to the Colorado Central. This whole area is now big into the casinos. I'm not sure if the railroad's even there anymore. But you had to park way up here and hike down the hill. And of course, at 9,000 feet, hiking back up the hill is not a lot of fun. But they were using this this shed. And we were able to get a cab ride on this. There's a lot more family stuff. All the family stuff's cut out of here, obviously, Rocky Mountain National Park and things like that. Me and Bruce and Dad headed over to the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. Here they have a Burlington 05 484 5629. And the 318 was actually the engine they were using that day. Lettered not for the Rio Grande, but for the Golden City and San Juan. Of course, Rio Grande Southern 20 was there. From there, it was over to the High Country Railroad, which uses an assortment of foreign locomotives, mostly German built. Little industrial diesel and really small shay behind it. And they were using this locomotive here for their passenger train. From there into Denver, we went to the Forney Museum. The Chicago Northwestern 444 was there. And our third big boy of the trip. This is down in Colorado Springs, Denver and Rio Grande 168. This has since been unstuffed and unmounted and is now over at the Cumberland Toltec Scenic and in operation. This is in Colorado Springs. I have no idea what it is. These two industrial engines. I'm going to ask some of my Colorado friends if they know exactly what's going on here. But we were here to ride the Manitou and Pikes Peak. Once again, this is one of those train things the entire family did. Here you see one of the trains coming down the hill into the station. And here we are up on the mountain. Our train is in the siding, waiting for this downhill train to come by. Here's one of their older cars sitting on a siding just outside of the station area. Then went over to the Cripple Creek and Victor. We're still sort of in the Denver area, although we're stretching it at this point. Once again, they use some foreign locomotives. (0440). That's kind of interesting. And then driving along, we came across this display in Gunnison, Colorado. Denver and Rio Grande Western 268. Also on display here, of course, is the water tank and caboose. There's also a station here. Now we're in Durango. This is another, I said this was one of the train things the entire family did. We spent a day riding from Durango up to Silverton. Back in 1978, this was still the Denver and Rio Grande Western. It hadn't been sold yet to the Durango and Silverton narrow gauge. And of course, the locomotives still sported diamond stacks that had been applied for a movie job they did. Remember when Charlie Bradshaw bought the railroad in '82, he said the first thing he did was get rid of the diamond stacks. Meanwhile, I grew a real appreciation for these 282s. My favorite Rio Grande steam locomotive of the narrow gauge, with those air pumps mounted on the front. Just a cool looking locomotive.
Hey, Steve, are those the ones that they call the sports model?
Your sports models, yes, they are.
All right.
And of course, back then you could actually walk around the Durango yard without getting harassed. Here we see the 476 in the roundhouse. And here we are up in Silverton. Of course, being the novice photographer that I was, I couldn't wait for Grandma to get out of the frame before I shot the picture. I just, aimed the camera and shot the picture. And here we are heading back on the High Line. Somehow we overtook the Black Mesa and Lake Powell. Once again, one of those things I had no idea what I was looking at. But here's these electric locomotives pulling a coal train in the middle of the Arizona desert. Really couldn't figure this out. The Black Mesa and Lake Powell was not connected to the outside world at all. All it did was haul coal from the mine to the power plant. It just shut down in the last 4 years or so. Time flies. I was going to say last couple of years, but it's probably been longer than that already. But back then, I had no idea what I was looking at. This is a shot from the car window. Next stop was the Heber Valley in Heber City, Utah. They were using number 36, 36 this day.
Former Sierra Railroad.
I think it is, yeah. And then this locomotive, number 100, I didn't I'm not sure where this came. It looks like a Union Pacific tender on it. It's not UP 618. That's a 280. This is a 262 here. Or 282. 282. Oh, there's 618 behind me. Yeah.
It's, I think, Santa
Now I
Maria
see,
Valley.
yes. Yeah, now I see the 618. Never mind. Then we went into Salt Lake City. We did things there, like we went up to a rehearsal of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, went to the Great Salt Lake, did a few things like that. Once again, since we had two cars, while Mom, my sister, and brother-in-law were lounging by the hotel pool, we went down into downtown Salt Lake City to see what we could find. And back then, you could walk right into the shop of the Union Pacific in Salt Lake City. And no one said boo. In the background, you see a turbo set. I guess they had been retired at this point because they're missing their tenders. Got two of the locomotive units there. And Amtrak was in town. F40 in the first paint scheme, phase 1. And over to the Rio Grande yard. I had not seen the Rio Grande before, other than the narrow gauge steam engines. This was pretty cool. And also in the Rio Grande yard was Western Pacific's bicentennial unit. And for some strange reason, there was a Frisco engine in the yard. And Union Pacific 833, a sister to the 844 and 838 we saw earlier. That's in a park in Salt Lake City. From there, we started to come back east at a fairly quick pace. We did stop in Sheridan, Wyoming, for some reason, an old hotel there or something that was on the itinerary for the family stuff. But across the street from the hotel was another of the Burlington 05s, like when we saw back in the Colorado Air Museum a little while ago, the 5631. Went to Mount Rushmore, and while we were in the area, we went over to the Black Hills Central. Apparently they used these little critters on a train while the line was partially washed out several years before this. Black Hills Central is now all standard gauge, but you can see back then it was dual gauge. The locomotive number 9 there, that's Colorado and Southern number 9. It would later, much later, be restored back to its Colorado and Southern livery. Sent over to the operation we saw at Central City, where it ran just a fraction of a season, broke down, and has not run again, unfortunately. Is one engine I would have loved to have seen under steam. So this day they were using standard gauge, this saddle tank engine. Oh, they had 2 engines under steam. Okay. Good thing I have slides. I don't remember a whole lot back then. And off they go. That's an interesting first car behind the locomotive there. Someone at one time told me that was actually a cut down interurban car, but I'm not sure about that. We wound up in Mitchell, South Dakota, to see the Corn Palace. And lo and behold, Mitchell was a big town on the Milwaukee. So we snuck out of the Corn Palace a few minutes early, leaving mom and my sister and brother-in-law behind, headed over to the yard in Mitchell and got some Milwaukee Road stuff. This would be my only time actually seeing the Milwaukee Road before it was abandoned. Now we're moving across the country pretty fast, heading for home. Next stop is North Freedom, Wisconsin, the Big Continent Railway Museum. They were using Dardanelle and Russellville number 9. Also there at the time was Burlington 282 number 4960, which had been a big fan trip engine on the Burlington in the 1960s and is now employed by the Grand Canyon Railroad in Williams, Arizona, although it doesn't look anything like this on the Grand Canyon. The engine I wanted to see there was Chicago Northwestern 1385, which was the primary engine at North Freedom for many, many, many years. It was out of service on this day. And here's the DNR number 9 at the museum. From here, I don't think we stopped anywhere else. We got as far as, I think, Cleveland that night, and then finished the drive off the next day back to New Jersey. So that was the Great Western Trip of 1978.
Great show, Steve.
All
That
right.
was really
Thanks. I'm going to turn this off for the YouTubers now. Next show will be 8 o'clock start, but date to be determined. Going to have some other interesting stuff. I'm doing a main seacoast trip with Pete Laro in a couple of weeks. That'll be part of it. Probably some other current event stuff like that. So for the YouTubers, I'm going to sign off and we'll